We're back with our third and last interview for DPW Director this evening. So, Rando, welcome to Hatfield. Uh, I will introduce myself, Ed Jaworski, my colleague Greg Gagnon, and Luke Longstreet. What it is we'll ask you some questions, and then at the end, you can add to whatever you want to add at the interview. And then we will be going into discussion on our choice. And then once we determine that choice, we'll let you know one way or the other. And if chosen, you would go in, we would request time to go into negotiations with you, possibly at a soon time. I mean, whatever. So let's see. We left off with me asking the last question, was it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Please tell us about yourself and why you are specifically interested in being the Hatfield DPW director.
Okay. So I'm a 2002 grad of the Department of Environmental Science and Regional Planning of Westfield State. I got a BS in Environmental Science. My first job out of college was with a company called Environmental Compliance Services. They're an environmental consulting firm. I started out as a field tech there, and once project managers realized I could write reports, I quickly transitioned into project scientist and had a couple projects that I managed. I was there for 7 years, got a lot of experience with analytical equipment, data analysis, technical writing, and project management. In 2008, we started seeing layoffs. Nobody wanted to pay for environmental work. I was caught in the third round of layoffs, and I hold the benefits for the family, the health insurance, so I needed a job and started working for the highway department in Southampton. 3 years after I started working there, the then superintendent announced his retirement, and I applied for the job and was hired in 2014. I've been there since 2014. As highway super, I'm responsible for all the paved and gravel roads, drainage, traffic controls, snow and ice, highway fleet maintenance, buildings and grounds. That's like cemeteries, parks, athletic fields, the transfer station, MS4 stormwater compliance. I provide manpower and equipment to the water department, and different than Hatfield, we don't have septic. We don't have sewer. Everybody's on septic. I also do the petroleum compliance for our 4,000-gallon underground storage tank and Chapter 90 and grants administration. And why I would like the position. So right now, I feel like I'm doing a lot of the responsibilities of both a DPW director and a superintendent. If I've read the job description adequately, it looks like I would be a good fit for the position, and I think it's the next step in my municipal career.
Thank you. Explain one of the biggest challenges you have faced in your professional career, and walk us through the process you used to resolve it.
Well, I think I'll use the same example I used during the screening interview. So when I transitioned from a member of the crew to the superintendent, I think everyone in the department was older than I was. So I faced the challenge of trying to earn their respect, and I did that by trying to outwork them. I would be the first one in, the last one to leave. If there was a job that I knew nobody wanted to do and we were shorthanded, I would go out and do it, usually involved weed whacking. And I'm not saying this is the right approach, but I'm telling you this is how I did it. I found it to be effective in this situation, but you know, your mileage may vary.
Tell us about a large project you were responsible for managing. Describe your involvement from project inception through its successful completion.
Okay, I've actually got a list of a lot of larger projects we've done in Southampton, but one that I've gone through all the way, I think, would be East Street Bridge replacement. This was a bridge that was not structurally deficient, but functionally obsolete. We are trying to rebuild East Street. It's one of the major roads in town. But if I were to rebuild the road first, it would bottleneck down to a bridge that's not wide enough for pedestrian accommodations. So we pushed the bridge first, seemed like the logical first step. It was a massive undertaking. I think we started in 2017 with the successful application for a MassWorks grant. We got a MassWorks grant for $1 million. Wasn't quite what we needed to complete the project, so we went and got the voters to approve another 1.4 million in debt exclusion, and then started the process of environmental permitting. Was an let me back up. That was 2017. We all know what happened after that. COVID slowed everything down, including materials and the bidding process and everything. Environmental permitting took way longer than it should have. We were permitting from like 2020 to 2021, waiting for both the DEP to get the waterways license approved, and then our town conservation commission. It was slow to get it through there as well. Utility relocation was another basic year, 2021 to 2022. And because there was a gas line and a water line that were attached to the bridge, we had to have the gas line bored underneath the river, and then the water line removed from the bridge. They set up a bypass, and then it had to be put on back on afterward. But construction finally started in 2022, and the bridge was completed in 2023. So I won't portray that I was in charge of the entire project. We employ a lot of consultants. I'm not an engineer, but I still have to be aware of all of the different phases it went through, push people when they needed to be pushed, and make sure everything was lining up with the utility relocations and all that. It was a great feeling when that project was done. Like I said, I've done several other projects, but I was on the back end of some of them. Athletic fields. When I started, I just had to finish up punch lists at the end of that project. We were involved in a safe routes to school shared use path along Route 10. Since it was on Route 10, it was state funded for design and construction, but the town was responsible for negotiating right of way. So that was something new and different that I'd never done before. And after that Glendale reconstruction, there was a 0.7 mile reconstruction of Glendale Road. It was a second phase of another part that had been reconstructed earlier. And I took over at like 75% design stage. Had to negotiate right of ways, which I'd done once before. And then construction 2019 to 2020. We're in the middle of a bunch now. If you want me to keep going, I don't know what the time is like, but I can go on if you'd like. Or is that sufficient?
That's sufficient.
Okay.
What are some of the biggest challenges facing public works departments now? And what do you think might be some of the biggest challenges specifically to Hatfield?
Okay, that's a good question. I can speak in general. Infrastructure is one of the things that's most easily cut from budgets because you don't see the degradation immediately. Like you can cut a little bit out of your pavement management budget, and the road might, the degradation is not immediate. So you're not going to see the results of underinvestment for years. And that's tough. You see other stuff more immediately. You see that there's not a police cruiser. You see that there's not a new ambulance. But public works is a little longer until you start seeing the ramifications of underinvestment. In addition, we in Southampton have had problems attracting licensed applicants for our positions, both CDL drivers and people with hoisting licenses. It's hard to compete with the private sector in those jobs for people to have those licenses. So I've struggled to get wages to a competitive level in our town. They're never going to compete with private industry, but you can still push them higher to try to attract candidates who recognize the benefits of, pensions and municipal benefits. Those are the two that jump right out at me. In Hatfield, that's interesting. I mean, that was going to be one of my questions for you later in the interview. I think having two internal candidates going for the position may be challenging, depending on how they feel. If I were to get the position and they didn't, I'm not sure how, but I mean, I would approach it with an open mind and hope that they're professionals, and go from there. That might be challenging. Other challenges I could see right off the bat are learning the town, the geography of the town. I don't know any of the roads. Learning the people in the department, in town hall, residents. I think there's more challenges than not challenges. Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay, tell us about a personnel issue you have faced in the past. How did you resolve the issue?
So I've been pretty lucky. We haven't had too many serious personnel issues. We've got a great group of guys, but at one time, early in being superintendent, there were two employees who just did not get along. And it got to the point where they were in each other's faces about this far from each other. And I had to get between them and just stop the altercation. And one method is to try to match that energy, to try to get them to, yell. And I actually have found it more effective to get quieter, and so they have to pay attention to you. And I basically said, who wants to go home unpaid first? And they recognized where it was going and stopped and went along among their own ways. One of the employees soon after that decided he wanted to work somewhere else. So that ended up working out for us.
What are some best practices in fostering employee accountability and managing the workload of employees?
Okay, there's two questions there. What was the first part? Was best BMPs for accountability. And the second part, I'm sorry.
Managing the workload of employees.
So best management practice for accountability. There are a lot of this. I've never had any formal management training. Everything I've learned is on the job. I've been asked in other interviews what my management style is. And it sort of depends on the situation. So for accountability, during a snowstorm, the accountability is your name's on it at the end of the day. My management style during that is pretty authoritarian. I'm just going to tell you, you need to, you're in an emergency situation. It's not a time to have a debate about it. You just go out and do what you know you've got to do. I think sometimes when employees have their names on something, for example, if I'm developing specifications for a new truck or a replacement for a truck, and the person who is going to be using that piece of equipment, truck or piece of equipment, if they're involved in the process of developing the specification for it, then if you use that specification, the person can't complain about the truck when it comes in. They're invested in making sure that truck's going to work for the town, Others, I think basically if you're in a small town, most of the time you realize you're not anonymous. Everybody knows that you're who you are and what you're doing. You can think you're anonymous, but the number of eyes looking out of houses, I tell my guys all the time, you can think you're anonymous, but if you're sitting in a turnout up on Fulmer Road in our town, is a pretty rural, I'll get a phone call about it. And then you're going to get a phone call about it. So I think that's the accountability part. Managing workload, I'm not sure how it is in Hatfield, but in Southampton, it's always a struggle. We've been shorthanded for a number of years. You have resident expectations, and you have to come in every day and look at the workload you have and apply the resources you have in the most logical manner. Biggest fire first system. And you just work from there every day. Maybe Hatfield's set up better, and you have more resources than we do. I'm not sure. I wouldn't know that till I got into the department.
Please describe your experience in writing and managing a department budget.
I'm responsible right now for the department budget for the highway department, as well as the enterprise fund. Our transfer station is enterprise fund, so I'm responsible for that budget as well. When I started in the position, I sat down with the town accountant and gathered the previous 4 years of data on what everything cost, electricity, water, what we'd spent on pavement, road salt, sand. So I had a good idea of trends in the data, and I've been tracking it ever since. Every year I'll go through the condition of accounts, separate out what it costs for my maintenance budget. I know my budget very well, and I think that's the only way to go when you go to town meeting and somebody has a question. You know your budget backwards and forwards. You know what it's cost. You can have explain to them the logic of why you asked for this year. You put a 2% increase on electricity or something. The price of salt is going to be variable. The price of gasoline and diesel is going to be variable. So those are a little looser. And we in Southampton, we work the budget. You sometimes have to move things around starting now because maybe more trucks broke down. But that's managing public works. Things change. You don't know how many storms you're going to have. You don't know where the price of commodities are going to go. And you just have to do your best with the money that's been appropriated to you.
Thanks. Tell us about your experience in applying for and managing grants. What is the largest grant project you have been involved with?
That's probably the $1 million MassWorks grant for the bridge. I had to produce quarterly reports back to the state on the progress in the report. So I've already used that example though. So another one, we're in the middle of a culvert, or we're at the back end of a culvert inventory and assessment. We used ARPA money for that. So I've had to do quarterly reports for that as well on the project status every quarter, what we've accomplished, what we've got left. Are we on track? Those are probably the two big ones that jump out at me. Chapter 90 is another grant project that you have to manage, and it's a big one. You have to know what you're going to do in February. Hatfield is Franklin Cog. You use them to bid out?
We do.
Okay.
Use them for bids.
So you
Even though we're MPV.
need to know your work plan in February so that you can get your quantities bid out, streets named that you're going to pave. There's a whole workflow with that. And then you have to get your Chapter 90 requests into state aid so that you can get the work scheduled ASAP in the spring and go from there.
What are some of the best practices that you have used for communicating with the general public both with getting messages out to residents broadly and in following up on individual requests?
I'd say broadly, just get back to people. When somebody calls a second time, you realize you've waited too long to call them back. People want a response. As far as the best management getting back to people, I perform really well written. I can give a well thought out response. But if you have to do it over the phone, it's fine too. It depends on the individual, which way if somebody gives me an email with a question, it's easy to write back an email. If they call you on the phone, you have to give it verbally. And they may not always like the answer. I have to tell people no a lot. It's part of the job. For example, the other day, we have a culvert in town that is across somebody's driveway. They called up, asked me to take a look at it. I went and took a look at it, went back to the office and checked the road layout, found out it was on private property, and had to call her back and say, that's not anything we can take care of. And she was not happy. But it's on private property. It's not part of our purview.
The town recently completed its new comprehensive plan and is working on implementation. How would you view the DPW director's role in helping the town make this plan a reality?
What's the comprehensive plan?
Same thing as like a master plan.
Oh, okay.
So
Master plan.
essentially a 20-year outlook of where the town is going, recommendations that a board made or a committee made as to how to get the town to those goals.
Well, I'm sure it's a collaboration between, you usually meet just every other week or something, the select board? Or are you involved in day-to-day stuff, or is that all Andrew?
Typically, the administrator takes the.
Okay, so it would be probably a collaboration with Andrew as to what he needs from me, and what we need to be a part of as the DPW.
And this position is responsible for all town facilities, both for ongoing maintenance and capital repairs. How would you put together a realistic capital plan that acknowledges the town's limited funding for big projects?
That's a good question. So we have a capital plan right now that just has vehicles on it, and I have a pavement management plan that needs to be updated because it doesn't include parking lots or the sidewalks that we're adding. Pavement management should encompass all that. I've been doing a lot of research on even further asset management plans with the development of our culvert inventory. I'd like to fold in a lot of stuff, but those plans cost money too. So you always have to balance out like what's going to work for the town. Putting together a realistic plan, in my experience, has been useful life of any vehicle that's used for snow and ice control is maybe 12 to 15 years if you're lucky. I suspect that Hatfield's got the same problem we do. You push well past that lifespan. I did note when we were talking in the screening interview that Hatfield does a lot of lease to own, or at least some lease to own. So that's interesting. That's not something we've employed in Southampton, but I'm interested to learn more about it. I've found it effective to really prioritize what we need for vehicles, and it gets to the point where if you pull the vehicle you need in front of town hall when you're asking for the money and the residents look at the vehicle, I've been pretty successful at getting the money. We do our best. We've got a preventative maintenance program on all of our vehicles, but especially the new ones. We undercoat them every year, try to rinse all the salt off of them after every storm. But when the weather's consistently under freezing, you can't really do that, but we do our best.
Well, that sort of ends our questions. So now at this point, if you have anything you'd like to add or say to us.
So I guess I'm curious what you think, I'm an outsider. I'm not a town resident. And what do you think my biggest challenges would be in the position if I were picked as candidate?
I think it would be just getting to know people and get respected.
Okay.
Yeah, learning the views of the different residents in town and what the individual needs are for the different areas of town. You know, down here in the center, we're in floodplain, and so there's certain concerns that happen down here. We have the center part of the town with the 91 and Route 5 corridor, where there's a lot more commercial development and stuff like that, some larger infrastructure projects. And then we have the west end of town, which is much more mountainous, little bit more difficult to access, especially in the winter months for the residents out there. So we kind of have like 3 different levels within town almost, and each one kind of has their own niche, you know. So that
Probably their own climate too. Sorry to
yeah, slightly.
Yes.
We have that in Southampton. It can be
Yeah.
snowing up in the hills, and then down in the center of town, it's just wet roads.
Exactly. Yeah.
So-
And so I think that would definitely, I mean, coming from another small town, I think you probably have a pretty good handle on that. But just learning how those nuances apply to Hatfield directly.
Well, I mean, honestly, we touched on this in the screening committee. I think it would be really important to, I'd be leaning on the superintendents, honestly, for their expertise. They know the town. I don't. I need them. I need them and their expertise to help me do my job. And I would be anxious to know what they need from me. So as far as big projects you've got coming up, what do you think would be a couple of the major things you'd want to get going with the new?
Well, we're
DPW
finishing
director.
up a 5 and 10 project, and we're presently doing a water treatment project.
Yep.
And the other project that we have on the books would be getting a roof for the elementary school
right.
and
We talked about that.
boilers. So there's a few things going on right now. For the future, that's still to be decided, I think, on. And the reason I say to be decided, because right now we have 3 studies going on. We have DPC is doing the drinking water study, the wastewater study, and the drain water study. So it's going to be interesting to see what reports we get from those 3 studies to see if there's any critical areas that have to be, attacked or fixed or whatever. So those could be long range plans. I think the future of the town is trying to keep extending our sewer line with looking for grants. And in this town, it's always been trying to find a fine line between maintaining our farmland and bringing in industry to offset our tax base. But I mean, that's future. So that's sort of been the biggie. I mean, the town itself is, I believe we have an excellent staff working for the town. So we're just budgeting and planning. I just off the top of my head, I'm sure I can think of more stuff.
Yeah, and we have the comprehensive plan, so we've already planning things that we can plan right now. Kind of, sort of.
And this comprehensive plan that we have is really, it's pretty all encompassing. And there's actually a lot of, bullet points and topics that are achievable. And the DPW position would be one that would help facilitate a lot of that. So it would be good.
Especially with the culverts, that might be
Culverts,
realistic.
we have a lot of drainage ditches
Yeah,
in town
yeah.
that, used to be part of an agricultural network and now they're part of residential networks. So some of the agricultural exemptions for conservation and stuff like that and ways to be able to handle that it's kind of murky and sticky. But like the Conservation Commission and the DEP we're trying to navigate that. So, but that might be something that DPW is involved in because some of our stormwater system does empty into some of those old agricultural waterways. So it's going to be a challenge between private owners, but also the town side. But, so it'd be that could be projects that you see coming down in the future.
So the way it's going to work is once this interview's over, we're going to go in discussion here over the candidates and try to pick somebody tonight. And if you're chosen or not chosen out, Andrew will notify you. But if you are chosen, then the next step would be going into negotiations and saying we can reach an agreement. So that's where we're at right now. So right after we're done with you, we're going to start discussing who we feel is the best fit for the town. And we'll also discuss whether my colleagues want to pick 1 and 2, so that if 1 we can't reach negotiation with, and if 2 wants to take it or whatever. So that's where we're at right now.
All right.
Well, thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you for your time.
Thank you for applying, and thank you for coming to the town of Hatfield.
Sure.
So, John, we're going to take 5-minute break, and then we'll come back for negotiations or discussion on
Deliberation.
our choices. So,
Great.
I just want to take.